Good evening and thank you so much for joining us on The Last Word. My name is Sophia Wanuna. Tonight our focus in the Kenya Police Service. So earlier today, 5 police officers, an OCS and 1 GSU officer were killed at the Kapenguria police station. And of course, the initial statement from the Inspector General of Police indicated that the assault had been carried out by a terror suspect who was being held at that police station. Later on, the same being revised, and the IG now saying that it was actually one of their own that carried out the attack, leaving 7 officers dead in the wake of that attack early in the morning. On the other side of the country, in Lamu as well, an attempted attack at the Lamu police camp. One alleged Al-Shabaab suspect killed. It was said that 20 of them had attacked that camp. So just what is going on as far as security in the country is concerned, the Kenya Police Service as well is what we want to canvass tonight. Be part of the conversation. You can tweet me at Sophia Wanuna. Let us hear your views in the various subjects and topics we'll canvass tonight. But let's get started with a look at some of the top stories we're covering for you tonight. And we begin with the Orange Democratic Movement Party has now issued a 7-day ultimatum to Budalangi Member of Parliament Babu Namwamba to officially tender his resignation letter or be replaced automatically as the party's SG. Now, Senator Agnes Zani, who was Babu's deputy, will be the acting ODM Secretary General. Meanwhile, the party has threatened to go back to the streets and demonstrate against the IBC if the National Assembly's Legal Affairs Committee does not stop hearing a petition seeking the removal of IBC commissioners.
Mr. Ababu Namwamba has been absent from duty for several weeks now. He has even been quoted as having made some pronouncements which have not been formally communicated to the party. The NEC therefore resolved to give him 7 days to resume duty or formally communicate his decision to the party for appropriate action to be taken.
Now, since last week's deadly clashes in South Sudan, governments of countries such as the United States, India, Japan, and even neighboring Uganda have elaborate plans of evacuating their citizens, but not the Kenyan government. Now, we spoke to Josh Karaoke, a Kenyan who is still in South Sudan, and his brother Caleb, who has, since the clashes flared, been rallying for action, not just for his brother, but for other Kenyans still looking for an exit strategy.
Sunday evening was, I think, my worst day because my brother called me at around midnight and he got good connection. So he called me, he said, bro, I'm hiding under the bed and I just want you to listen to this. And the next thing I heard was just gunshots and I think missiles or whatever it's called, shelling going on. And for like a few seconds I froze. The wound that is in him, and he may not tell me he's my elder brother, but the wound is, when he wanted help from his motherland, wasn't forthcoming when he needed it.
In Lamu County, an Al-Shabaab terrorist was today killed when about 20 heavily armed militants attacked the Mangai Police Rapid Deployment Unit camp in Basuba, Lamu East constituency. According to the Lamu County Coordinating Police Commander Abdullahi Aden, Al-Shabaab now terrorists who were armed with rocket-propelled grenades and who were shooting randomly tried to force their way into the camp at around 2 a.m. However, the attackers were repulsed by security officers. Aden says an AK-47 rifle and 3 magazines full of ammunition were seized from the militants as they fled. A police officer suffered minor injuries during the fire exchange. The police commander has called on locals to be vigilant and report any person with bullets or suspicious wounds to the security agencies. And to the story that sets the basis of our discussion tonight, police are investigating why a police officer who was at work last night grabbed a gun and went on a shooting spree, now killing 6 of his colleagues at Kapenguria police station. Abdi Hakim Masla signed off at 10 p.m. last night, then returned to spray his colleagues with bullets at the station, which is in West Pokot County. Here's our reporter Elvis Kosgei with more details from Kapenguria.
Early this morning, heavy gunfire rent the air at Kapenguria police station as a lone gunman took police officers and inmates hostage. Even before the officers manning the station situated 3 kilometers from Kapenguria town responded to the attack, the gunman gained entry and took cover at the station. And just officers are just lined up just to make sure that the all premises is protected. And what we have gathered is just that the record squad has just entered in and just to make sure that this is the Al-Shabaab militia. With the unconfirmed reports, we don't know that maybe it's number 2 or 1 person who has been shooting the air in a duration of every 5 minutes. And they're just lining up on their line of duty. They're just to make sure that the all places is protected. Sight of General Service Unit officers triggered shoutouts between the gunman and the officers. At the cells was a group of locals arrested, along with an alleged Al-Shabaab recruiter. The Office of the Inspector General of Police has confirmed that all inmates were safe by the end of operation. Though 6 police officers were killed, the gunman was a police officer at the station. It is still unclear why Officer Abdikadia Masla, who was at work Wednesday night, signed off from work at 10 p.m. only to grab a gun from a colleague.
Wenye familia hizo hawajajua, lakini kuna officers wamepoteza maisha na kuna officers ambao wamejeruhiwa na tumewapeleka hospitali wakiwa katika hali stable ambayo sasa saa hii wanaendelea kutibiwa. Lakini tukiwa serikali tumeenda kwa hiyo station katika hali ya kudhibiti hali ya station hiyo, na yule lone gunman yule aliingia kufanya hiyo maafa, hata yeye maisha yake hakuna. Kwa hivyo yeye pia hayuko hai.
Kuhusu police station yetu ya Kapenguria, tunashukuru maafisa wetu kwa sababu it has been brought to an end. Huyo jamaa ambaye alikuja akaingia kwa police station akaleta madhara ambayo mtaambiwa na bwana Arsi tuko naye hapa. Haya maneno yameisha.
Muwe macho hata na ndugu yako. Kama kuna mambo ambayo unatazamia ambayo si ya haki, usifiche kwa sababu ni ndugu yako, kwa sababu yeye atalete madhara ile tunaona siku ya hapa.
14 students from Chewoyet Secondary who had been arrested for allegedly participating in arson attack were also at the holding site when the mayhem started. Residents who were watching the ordeal from far were wondering how a single officer could cause a terror for 9 hours in a protected facility. Elvis Kosgei, KTN News, Kapenguria Police Station, West Pokot County.
Thank you, Elvis, for that report. My guest tonight in studio is Dr. Simiyu Werunga. He is the Director General of the African Center for Security and Strategic Studies to help us canvass the subject tonight. Thank you for being with us. It's good to see you again. So, early morning reports start emerging of an attack at this camp. Of course, a siege that we understand lasted 8 hours. Are you surprised by this?
I'm a bit surprised because there's been a trend of attacks at police stations. We've seen attempts by the police to put some measures at police stations or police posts to ensure that they have some measure of readiness to deal with what is bothering this country. So for a lone gunman, let me call him a lone gunman, because we know now he's a policeman, to be able to stage a siege in a police station for 8 hours, and we are being given a reason that the wrecker squad was on the way coming, yet the police have been trained, and I'm not blaming them, they've been trained to be able to contain certain situations before they get reinforcement from specialized forces to deal with this. So yes, as a Kenyan, I'm a bit surprised. And number two, we want to get the details. How did this man come, grab a gun from a police officer who's been trained and told that that weapon is supposed to be his second mattress, so that at any one time you are not supposed to lose that weapon, because that is what protects you first as a police officer, and 2, it protects your friends and colleagues, and 3, it's supposed to protect the Kenyan people.
Right.
So yes, to some extent we must all be surprised that actually such a thing has happened. It took them 8 hours. We've seen a trend in this country where now police are becoming targets. And therefore, as a service, we should have expected that they are seeing this. And therefore, they are preparing themselves and realizing that they actually become the target now.
Right.
So that is, I think, my answer to you.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
disconcerting that, many at times
Yes.
it's always falling back to the specialized services,
You're
and
right.
you'd expect at that level of a threat they would be able, as you said, to contain it. But also looking at the response and at least the holding statement, that as all this was unfolding, the first, we heard from the IG was that this was a terror suspect that was actually being held at that police station, who had managed to break out, grab a gun from one of the officers and start shooting. But that turned out not to be the case. Is that an honest mistake that could have been made by anyone, or is it an issue as far as communication and understanding how these things work, and also just managing before you speak and give a statement, being able to be sure?
Okay, this is what I want to look at it from a national perspective. And one of the biggest problems we have in this country is about communication. This is another example of how we are not well grounded in what to communicate to the Kenyan people on matters of insecurity. Because nobody was pushing the police to give Kenyans information that they were never sure about. So why couldn't they have waited to give Kenyans proper information, as much as there was anxiety?
Right.
But it's always good that the first thing you mention or you speak and tell the public is what you think you are 100% factual. So the fact that they came out with a story and then later on recanted the story and gave us another story gives you the general understanding of how we manage disasters, emergencies, and how we are dealing with terror issues in this country. So yes, it is unfortunate, Sophia, but all these things we don't seem to be learning. And I'm not blaming anybody. I think we've been under terror threat for so long.
Exactly.
That
and
we should not be
kind
talking,
of situations,
yes.
again, questioning
Yeah.
communication.
We should not be talking about these things 10, 15 years down the line. So yes, I think we need, and as a country, either the police might not have the capacity, and therefore as a country we need to create a serious counter-terror command center. You see, we have a counter-terror center that does research and training and all that. But I think we have not created a command center that is purely dedicated to dealing with issues of terror in this country. Because I can tell you for a fact that this country is going to deal with terror for a very long time. And if we are not futuristic in our thinking, if we are not futuristic in our planning, then we shall continue seeing these problems for a very long time to come.
Yeah. And what's worrying is that, the lack of, apparently lessons learned, as far as, say, communication, that there'll always be questions asked, whatever, as a fluid situation unfolds, you'd imagine the safest thing to say is there's been an attack. So far we know of one person, and not go into details that you're unclear about, because you open yourself up to, the agency or the police service opens itself up to ridicule, to people looking at it as they don't even have a hold on the basics.
And then that one erodes the confidence of the public in our security agencies. And I'll give you an example. We've been watching the Dallas incident. And the chief of police will come and tell them, we don't have enough information. We shall share with you once we are sure we have actual information that is factual that we are going to share with you. That is what we expect to be seeing with our police service. Because there's nothing, there's no emergency, yes, for you to come and give us a wrong information. Then later on you come and say, no, what we gave you. That erodes serious confidence in the Kenyan people on what we hear and get from our security agencies.
So tell me, Doctor, Was it possible? This is an officer, the suspect, who of course was killed as well in this siege, was working last night, left work, went home, then comes back. Apparently it was to rescue one of the inmates, one of the individuals held in custody. Was it possible to have intelligence of this kind of an attack? Is it something that you can actually catch before it happens? Or is it in and of itself, the nature and the manner in which it unfolded, impossible to stop?
I think sometimes it can be very difficult for you to be able to
Thought
countenance
such
this
yeah.
before it happens. Because this is an officer that was, we hear, was a fairly quiet officer. He was not a person of many things. He's a person who used to do his work and diligently hand over. It is very difficult, I think not even in Kenya alone, for you to countenance what happened unless this person was under profiling and therefore he was among those people that are under the radar to see how he behaves, what his actions are. And if he was not under the profiling aspect, then it's very difficult for the police to have been able to counter this before it happened.
Before it happened.
Yes.
There are also reports emerging, of course we haven't independently verified here at KTN, that he just worked for slightly over a year with the service. Does that for you bring into question whether it's training, one, but also most importantly, the vetting process, if at all it has even reached to that particular level,
Yes.
that the people we're getting into the force, do we know the state of mind they're in? Do we know what kind of individuals they're in? Or is it a matter of, okay, there's police recruitment, get the numbers in, we have 10,000 officers now, we have 20,000. Are you confident about the process getting in this men and women?
I'll tell you this, and people might skin me, but many of us know how recruitment is done. When you have 10,000 police officers to be recruited, I can assure you over 3,000 will be people brought in by politicians, parastatal heads, and therefore the vetting process and recruitment procedure, they might not be done the way it is supposed to be done. Now, this to me, and I don't want to blame anybody, but I'm just saying as a country, we don't seem to be learning. This is a country that is under attack. We are officially under attack by terrorists. And therefore, for you to have mass recruitment of like 10,000 police officers per year, you must put in mechanisms of due diligence before a person is recruited into the service. We know Al-Shabaab, ISIS are using people who are entering services, military, police, special forces, intelligence, to be their anchors inside those services. I'm not sure, because I'm not competent to say, that this country we have a mechanism of doing due diligence before a person is recruited into our services. But the fact that we know there's a bit of corruption in how we recruit our police officers, I'm not sure that we have that mechanism that actually countenances how people are being recruited, their profiles are done, their backgrounds are checked properly, and we've seen this even where people have been in college for 10 months only for them to be discovered that they fake certificates. So that shows you that we have a major gap in how we do due diligence before people are recruited in our security agencies.
Yeah. And is this an attack? Are Kenyans being a little bit too hard on the police, that this is an attack that could have happened anywhere, that whilst we question communication, we question the preparedness, and that they needed special ops to be able to come in and help, is it something that could have happened anywhere in the world? Are we being a bit too unfair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Could have happened anywhere in the world. What we are questioning is the fact that we know we are under this situation. There's a lot of money being given by the government to our security agencies to improve on their capacity, on the equipment, and specialized training. We know we can never be 100%. No country has ever been. But the problem is that we seem never to be getting the same problems every time we have a problem in this country.
Right.
And that is what we are questioning. And we are not expecting our services to be 100%. But we need to see some signs of improvement, that what we've been talking 5, 6 years ago is not taking place today.
Yeah.
And I want to add to this. As a nation, and I know the police know this, the military must be knowing this, we seem to be now having our police as a target for the terrorists. That speaks volumes about our vulnerability as a country. They used to throw grenades to the public, they will attack buses, but now you realize they're actually going for the forces that are supposed to protect the Kenyan people. That is an escalation in their process of engaging us in terrorism activities. So as a country, we must be asking ourselves, what then do we need to do to counter this? So from there, insurgents grows. The next thing you might hear, they tried a military camp in Mombasa. They were thoroughly beaten. So now we see them actually targeting our security forces. That is a major, major problem for a country, because it shows you that they have moved from this scale and they're upscaling their attack to deal with the people who are supposed to protect us, and therefore create fear and despondence in the security services, and therefore make Kenya very vulnerable. I think we need to be looking at it as a nation very seriously and start working on what we need to do to deal with this.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that as we go to the attack in Lamu. But talk to me briefly about, as a service, with the commanders around the country, with servicemen and women under them, what is it they can do now to ensure that if there's some ticking time bombs in their service, under their management, they're able to weed them out? Is that something doable, or is it you sit?
It is doable. I think this will be my suggestion to the Inspector General.
Right.
It might take a while, but let's have a very structured program to our police officers and other security agencies officers on countering terrorism. You see, we might be teaching a few of them, training a few of them, but let's have it as a structured awareness program that gives basic understanding and techniques on how to deal with this issue within the police stations, within the police posts, so that we have it from the Inspector General, make it a program, allocate necessary resources and equipment, and make it one of his pillars. Because if you have a police officer who has been taken through basic awareness of how to deal, to identify, and to notify suspects, even amongst themselves, to play a major role in ensuring that our police service is fairly ready to deal with this kind of emergencies.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, to Lamu now, another attack as well there this morning. It's claimed there were 20 Al-Shabaab militias that had come to this particular police camp, and this is a third attempt on the particular camp. And also this coming just Sunday, there was also GSU officers, grenades, that were, rather not grenades, homemade bombs that exploded near one of their carriers. So as you said, we're seeing more and more attacks towards to be protectors, the safeguarders of this country. So that's a worrying situation, but we haven't seen a difference in terms of stance, approach, strategy, or is it because it's security we are not supposed to know or see it?
I know there are some things that will never be shared with the public, because those are for the need to know. But I think because terrorism, as much as they are now targeting the Kenyan people, it is something that has affected Kenyans throughout. So while they have some things they might not want to share with the public, I think it's important to give confidence to the Kenyan people by telling Kenyans some of the things they've done that are not necessarily national secrets, so that Kenyans can understand and start having a feel that actually our police and our security agencies are doing something on this. I know the National Counterterrorism Center is having a strategy, and they are going out to schools, they are going out to faith-based organizations. I'm sure they'll get to the Kenyan people. This is an awareness for the public, but we also need to hear from the police, because they are the implementers, and they are the people who protect us. They are people who give confidence to the Kenyan people that the situation is under control, so that they are able to tell us that this is what we are trying to do, without necessarily sharing what they are doing internally to improve on their strategies.
Because even with those that fled today from
Yeah.
Lamu, you know, we
Yes.
understand some of them was with gunshot wounds, and the police appealing that area residents who come across such individuals should report. But many a times, even after this kind of appeals, we rarely see the citizenry coming out and saying, you know, we have this information. What is the disconnect there in as far as ensuring the people, Kenyans, are working together with the police officers to ensure these people are
I think the
apprehended?
disconnect, and this is something we've talked for a while.
Yeah.
When you read widely about terrorism, countering terrorism, and how countries strategize in dealing with this, you find that a country like the US has two prongs. It has what we call the carrot and the stick. The carrot is to deal with those ones they think they can talk to, whichever way they talk to, without necessarily making it public, to ensure that they fall over the other side. The stick is dealing with those that are hardened, and therefore as you deal with them, military-wise, security-wise, you have also other strategies that get to the people you suspect could be potential members of these terror groups.
Right.
And therefore, as a country, I think for some time we've been dealing with the stick, pumping them off the roads, off matatus, so-called extrajudicial killings. And therefore Kenyans, in those areas that we think we have this mass loyalty to terrorism, have completely stopped working with our security agencies. Therefore, probably we need to change as a country and say, yes, we know there's this program of surrender, we shall rehabilitate you, we shall make you a Kenyan. But you also see what is happening in Kwale. Those who have surrendered, some of them are being shot by suspects that have never been apprehended. So then how do we make it good for me to volunteer information to you when I'm not sure that tomorrow I'll not sleep in my house? So as a country, as a government, and I know they have some things they're trying to do, we've never had a comprehensive counter-terrorism strategy that actually deals with all those things I'm talking about, to ensure that Kenyans start gaining confidence that yes, I can work with the police, I can work with the security agencies. I'll be safe when I go back to my village, or I'll be safe if I'm put in a safe house, and therefore I can be able to divulge what I know. That, I don't want to say they're not doing it, but what we are seeing tells you that not much has been achieved.
Not much has been achieved. And
Yes.
before we move away from the subject of the protector being hunted
Yes.
in this particular case, this attack comes about 6 months after the Elade attack, for which many still have questions, especially as far as what were the numbers then. And we saw that CNN report saying maybe about 200 people. Do you think, again, the manner in which we handled that doesn't give confidence, or whether the numbers are big or whatever the case, we just have a system that's not quite working right when it comes to their very own as well?
Okay, Elade was a bit different. Elade played on our national psyche. It played on our capacity for our defense forces. And it played into the geopolitics of the region. So when you look at it as a government, there are some things that they were not going to share, especially the numbers. Because one, when you share the numbers, you are playing in the hands of the Al-Shabaab.
The narrative.
Number two, you are telling some countries that initially never used to look at Kenya as a serious military power that, okay, so that was funny. We can actually now understand that what they were telling us as a region is not true. Then number three, the politics cannot allow some of these things to be shared. And I speak from a national perspective. Kenyans may not agree with me on this, but El Ade was a very difficult situation for the country to come out openly and tell the Kenyan people that this is what happened. We lost 120, 180, because that one again plays in the psyche of our military forces themselves. So while the information was not forthcoming, I still believe it was not handled well, because there's a way you can deal with that kind of situation, make Kenyans a bit satisfied, go directly to the people who have relatives and speak to them directly so that they know what is happening. And this is done all over the world. The military will send their own to go and speak to those people they have not found, missing first. And if there are those that they've found, they'll still go and talk to them directly so that we don't see these things we've been seeing on TV, relatives claiming that we've not seen these people. It's a way it is done, and I think it was not done well. And that's why Kenya still asks what exactly happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before we go on break, police don't have group chama officers to be able to speak out for them,
Yes.
fight for their rights and all. Do you find that perhaps there's a loophole in that they need, because even when the police are the ones who suffer the casualties, the kind of uproar we see with ordinary citizenry is not the kind that reflects on the other side. Is it unfair, and should something give to allow for them to also feel like they're part of?
Okay, there are very few countries in the world that that have police welfare organizations.
Yeah.
And those are countries that are fairly democratic. They have mature democracies where a police officer understands this is my role. It's voluntary. I came here. I know the consequences. I know the scales of my duty. And therefore, even if they don't meet some of the basic needs that this person expected to get, they understand that this is what I wanted to do. Now, I don't think Kenya as a country, we've gotten to a point, and many might disagree with me. I don't think as a country, with our polarized politics, with our ethnized politics, with our politics of no value, if we allowed this thing to happen in our police service as we stand, you'll start getting tribal police associations, tribal police welfare associations as a disciplined force. I think we still have some steps to go. But we have an organization that we gave a mandate through the Constitution called the National Police Service Commission. When you look at the mandates of the National Police Service Commission, welfare, very crucial. Salaries, very crucial. Career progression, very crucial. Promotions, so that we don't let one or two persons sit in an office and promote a whole police service. That was to be captured and handed over to the National Police Service Commission. Because as we were discussing about this law, some of us realized as a nation we are still growing. We are too polarized as a country to allow some of these things that happen, for example, in South Africa, where they have a welfare organization. So we said, hand over these things to an independent commission so that we remove these problems from the core of the National Police Service, give it to an independent commission that is supposed to deal with these problems. Now, they have, I think, 4 years down the line. Some of the same problems, we still see them. Arbitrary transfers, poor promotions, poor welfare for our police service. The question we need to ask, is it the commission that has failed, or the executive has deliberately denied the commission the space to deliver?
All right, so the hunter becoming the hunted and a
Yes.
rethink in strategy, definitely that needs to happen. But when we come back, I want us to turn the tables and look at also what has seen the service be under the spotlight for a while in the recent past. An Ipsos survey conducted recently found that brutality and extrajudicial killings are some of the common violations attributed to police officers. IMLU as well had a report released the other day and found that robbers who kill Kenyans, figures for the earlier months of this year were about 200. But police officers who kill Kenyans, according to their numbers, at least 1,200. So almost 5 times, even 6 times, you might say, the number. So who is the enemy, really, one may wonder. So we'll continue our conversation when we return here on The Last One. Please do stay with us. Welcome back to the last word here on KTN News. Glad that you're with us. In the second half of the show, we want to focus on the police service, but in as far as some of the issues that have been raised in the recent past, including that case of extrajudicial killings. Remember the killing of lawyer, a taxi driver, as well as the client Mwenda Mushiri as well, that brought about the question of whether the AIG and the CS as well should resign. That's what the Law Society of Kenya was calling for, and we'll hear what our guest has to say tonight. But a lot, and the police has been on the spotlight, of course, the question recently of those killings, brutal in their nature, seeing all of that unfold, first the search of the lawyer and the client as well as the taxi driver, and then for them to have been found, their bodies mutilated, the kind of torture they must have gone through, and then to see so far 4 police officers in custody, the torching of the AP, the police station, which was temporary, I understand. The farther we have come in as far as extrajudicial killings are concerned, are we making progress or are things getting worse?
I think let's look at it this way. Some of us fairly understand our police service. And at some point, the Commission of Police, under the law, was allowed to create specific squads to deal with specific crimes. Under the old Police Act, the police took advantage of that space and created very strange squads. Some of them worked very well, like the flying squad. Of course, eventually, it became part of the police. The Special Crimes Unit, they started working very well. They were allowed under the old law for the Commissioner of Police to create specific units to deal with specific crimes. Unfortunately, within that space, they also created some units that ended up generally being like killer squads. Now, some of them were never officially said to be, but every Kenyan knows what Kwekwe squad was doing, especially during the Mungiki period. Now, when you create something like that, and I'm not saying they did because I have no evidence to say, but there was that general. If you create something like that and give some officers specific responsibilities to deal with Kenyans the way those kind of squads were dealing with the Kenyans, what do the rest of the police officers feel, especially those who are not professional enough to know that probably what they are doing is not right? I need to do my work professionally. So you create this mind that a life can be dispensed, especially with police officers who are not professional. Majority are professional, majority are very annoyed with what some of their colleagues do. But the few that are not professional will have this thing in mind that it's easy to dispense of a Kenyan and life continues. So to me, the biggest problem is, and the IG has a major responsibility. I know his persona, demeanor is very professional. But of course, he entered into a service that is completely on its own. So my answer to your question is, yes, it is very unfortunate. Some of our police officers think dispensing a Kenyan life is normal. They'll deal with you now and go and have a drink and sleep. But as the second Inspector General, with vast mandate as the leader and the head of the police service, I think these are things that we need to see him dealing with them. He does not necessarily have to tell Kenyans, this is what I'm doing as an Inspector General, but he must create systems that must deal with this so that officers understand that their job is to protect and serve the Kenyan people, notwithstanding the difficulties that we know they go through. But it's the Inspector General that is supposed to do this. And we cannot, at the moment, and this one I'll say it, we cannot ask the Inspector General to be resigning every time a rogue police officer does something wrong, because we shall have 20 Inspector Generals, because these cases are many. Some of them are never reported by the media, but if you go to the countryside, you hear how many people have disappeared, they were arrested by the police, and nobody knows where
So you believe they're still killing squads?
They are
could be
not
put in the
killing
police?
squads, but we have rogue police officers who believe it is normal to dispense
But there are
of
those
a Kenyan life.
who argue some of these police officers, the manner in which they go about conducting their work is because of the mentality and the psyche they're getting from their bosses. Point in case is this cabinet secretary. He has been seen and accused in the past, say for example, of the manner in which he will speak about the vetting. Civilians should not be able to hold the police to account or looking into the business of men and women of uniform. You know, in reference to the IBC protesting, we have enough stockpiles of tear gas, let them come, we're ready. So a combative, harsh, a tone that has been seen to be bring it on and you will get it. And that some officers are just simply following suit from what they're getting from the highest office is that we're no nonsense people. We're going to ensure things work a certain way.
Now, that one can only be taken seriously by a police officer who is not professional. The cabinet secretary has no powers.
But you agree there is that sense of...
Yes, I'm coming to that.
Okay.
The cabinet secretary has no powers under the law to direct a police officer to undertake his job. He has powers under the law to give policy directions. And if he has to give the Inspector General any instructions, it must be in writing. I don't know whether the Inspector General demands that. But what we are seeing is this. We have a cabinet secretary who is ex-military, and he trained me by that. He made me who I am. So I always respect him, but some utterances are not very good. We have a cabinet secretary who is combative in nature. I think he's been in politics for a very long time, and he has not transited into a cabinet secretary, and I hope he will not murder me on this, a cabinet secretary who is supposed to be apolitical. So some of the statements you make outside your office can be taken by police officers who are not professional in nature, that we have that mandate from our cabinet secretary. But I can tell you for sure, many police officers who are professional will never get those kind of instructions unless they are given by their own commanders under the structure of the Inspector General.
Yeah.
So while some might think that the cabinet secretary is giving us a blank check to do what we need to do, that is not the law. And if a Kenyan can take the cabinet secretary to court, they need to prove whether what he said was implemented because he said it. So we must be very clear what the law says, what he speaks as a cabinet secretary, and what is being implemented by the police. So we must, as a nation, start differentiating the utterances of the cabinet secretary and what the Inspector General says. As a nation, listen carefully to what the Inspector General says, because he has all the powers under the law. Whatever comes out of his mouth is what is going to be implemented by the police.
So let's look at the institutions put out by the Constitution to look and focus on the excesses of the officers. And before you go to IPOA, let's talk about the Internal Affairs Unit, because we rarely get to hear about that. Is it a dead one as far as the Kenya Police Service is concerned?
Okay, the creation of, and I like reminding Kenyans who are part of this process.
Yes.
The creation of the Internal Affairs Unit was to act like the military police in the defense. People who have powers to deal with their fellow police officers internally because of transgressions. People who have the powers to overrule the Inspector General. It's a very powerful unit, by the way.
Wow.
Extremely powerful and semi-autonomous. Even the thinking, and it is still that way, although I don't know what they are doing, was that they're supposed to have an office outside Vigilance House, outside the office of the Inspector General, so that they make decisions independently, deal with their fellow officers independently, and when an officer is not satisfied internally, then they go to IPOA. Secondly, that unit can be what it is, like we say, an office is as the leader. If the leader of that unit is not what is expected of him or her, then you see what we are doing. But yes, I totally agree with you. That unit has not served the police service. It's now 4 years, 5, 6 years down the line after the Constitution. They have serious mandate to work and ensure that the police play by the rule. We've not seen that. Maybe it's because it's internal. But the law says they are supposed to share their reports with the public. They are supposed to share their reports with IPOA so that the Kenyans know that this is what we've done as an internal affairs unit, and this is what we've handed over to IPOA. This is what we've handed over to DPP, so that those who are found to have transgressed against the law are dealt with. The biggest problem is probably who is in charge.
Who is in charge?
I know who's in charge. I don't want to mention. But that could be an issue.
Yeah.
Because an office is about the leader. Number two, an office is about how you fund it. So if you're not funding this police affairs unit adequately to make it independent, give it an independent office, you make it look useless. And then number three, are they demanding for what is theirs? So that creates a conundrum where people are not hearing about the internal affairs unit.
Some don't even know it
The
exists.
police cannot even tell you a thing about the internal affairs unit, because when they have problems, they go direct to IPOA, which is a very sad situation. But I agree with you, that is a unit that was supposed to be like military police. You police your own police. You deal with your own officers within the service who transgress the law and do not work as per the code of ethics.
Yeah.
We've not heard of them. Probably they are still looking for funds to make them more operational.
More operational.
Yes.
And then there's the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. They have released some reports here and there, but even they have been criticized largely because we haven't seen heads rolling per se when it comes to the police service. So for them as well, are you satisfied with the role in which they play to ensure police stick to the rules?
Yes, yes, they've tried.
Yeah.
I know one of the biggest problems they have is funding. Every time they look for a budget, it's scaled down very badly. The IPOA, as we say it in short, is supposed to be all over the country. It's supposed to be in every county. It's supposed to be dealing with the cases at the county level. But as we speak, I think there are very few officers in this country. That is 4 or 5 years down the line because of funding. Two, they are inadequately staffed. And you can only be staffed if you have the funds to staff as per your structure. I know this because we work with these people. They are inadequately staffed, they are poorly funded, and I think there's a general thinking within the establishment that they're becoming a problem. So let them deal with what they have so that they don't have enough to give us problems. But there are majority of police officers who believe in IPOA. Of course, we've had other senior people talking about IPOA, but I think I have to say it to them. They've really tried within the confines and the restrictions of financing and the staffing that they have. I believe that if they were funded properly, staffed properly, IPOA will have changed the way the police operate in this country.
Yeah. As we bring this to a close, and as far as reforms in the police, do you believe those are still on course? And the welfare of police officers, so they are motivated, you know, they feel they're part of this country. They are loyal patriots, not going there for a job and getting the next bribe to be able to make it for each and every day. But is that on course to make sure that we're having the best service possible to protect Kenyans?
There was a book launched by the late Saitoti called the Police Reforms Program. It had 4 pillars. Many of them, one was okay, I can't remember all of them, but I know one was on professionalization, welfare, and many other things, I think 2. But there were 4 major pillars. The budget at that time, I remember, was 81 billion for 5 years. Now, the other day, I saw a relaunch of police reforms. I was not part of it, so I cannot speak much about what they say about the new booklet. But the relaunch was like, we start from where this one stopped, and we don't know when it stopped, so that we move ahead. And there was another budget I hear of about 91 billion or something. The biggest problem in this country is that we talk about reforms, but we don't want to make it happen.
Right.
The little that we see happening is within the confines of the little resources that the people and donors are putting in place. But if we want to work and follow the program, within the first 7 years after the launch of the Saitoti program booklet, the Kenya police will be completely different. So if we are going to play around with reforms, and yet we know very well that these officers depend on reforms to be what they are, then we are going to get the same services. We want to demand services from them, yet they don't have the capacity to give to us. Then lastly, as I finish, welfare. The National Police Service is supposed to deal with that. We keep on talking about police salaries, housing, mobility, medical. They were given medical scheme, and it had many problems. We don't know what the problem was in those who were supposed to provide it. To me, that is already a hindrance to our police officers to work. Welfare housing. At some point, we suggested, why can't you take some of these officers to stay in the estates? Give them house allowance. The reasoning was very funny, but my argument was, if we are really talking about community policing and the way we know it happening in other countries, some of these officers are supposed to live with the Kenyan people so that you understand the environment, you understand the psyche of the people, and you deal with those issues at that time. So I think our police have not been given enough and well enough to motivate them to believe that the reforms are actually taking place. And I hope that this new relaunch should be geared towards ensuring that resources are put in place to take over police officers if we are demanding quality service from them.
All right. Before we go, final question. We have seen several terrorist attacks in different parts of the world, and the people who seek to rain terror on people around the world, their tactics continue to morph. So we've not been attacked as a country to large scale for a while now, and God forbid, and of course prayer is that the police and the security agencies are doing as much as possible to ensure that does not happen. But what do you think as a country we need to be putting into consideration now, seeing what's happening with different parts of the world? Because it's a conversation that now requires international community type of approach, not one country and this is happening to them because they're third world. It's happening to the best of them, if I might put it that way. So what is it our agencies, our security agencies, but also the citizenry must put in mind as we face the very real threat of terror today?
I think my question will be a bit quick and simple. One, we have the Minister of Interior that is supposed to facilitate anything that this government does to take care of our security, national security for the people and for national institutions. Number two, we have a police service that is supposed to implement the facilitation done by the Minister of Interior. And then thirdly, we have a Kenyan people who are supposed to receive these services and work with the police service. I've not seen that program being implemented. And for as long as we don't connect these three, it will be very difficult for us to ask Kenyans to participate in this, although we have, I was in Nyumba Kumi, so I know what we are talking about. I know there's a committee that is still working on that. But for as long as we don't connect the facilitation of the Minister of Interior, which is the executive, the police service, which is the implementer, and the Kenyan people who receive these services, for as long as we don't morph them together and make them work together, and the Kenyan people believe that actually we are now being recognized as part and parcel of our national security program, it will be very difficult for us to demand from Kenyans who still believe and have not gained a lot of faith in our implementers to do what they're supposed to do. So we have a long way to go. I'm not saying it can't be done. It can be done. But we need to see it now. You see the problem with this country as I finish. One, we are not futuristic in our thinking. We don't do things we call scenario development. You know, you can develop a scenario for the future. And these are things that I expect the Minister of Interior, the Police Research Department, if they have one, to be working on this so that they are able to anticipate things in the future. You might not be 100%, but when you work on this, when you start thinking futuristically, when you start developing scenarios for the future, you'll be able to have some modicum of preparedness when things come because you thought about them earlier. Yes.
All right, well said, and that's why we'll wrap it up. Dr. Simiyu Erunga, thank you so much for joining us. He's Director General at the African Center for Security and Strategic Studies. That's the last word for tonight. I'm Sophia Wanuna. Have a blessed night.